Hello and welcome to Tap That MTG, the show where we tell you everything we know about Magic the Gathering. That's probably wrong, but fun to talk about. I'm Leslie.
And I'm Shauna.
My friend Shauna.
Sorry.
Thank you. And today we are bringing you a fun deep dive into one of the Strixhaven Precons. We're going to break this down for you, tell you all the cards that are in the deck, talk about what the deck is meant to do, and how you can use it wisely. And if you wait until the end, we have some tweaks that we think might make the deck just a little bit better. So thank you for joining us. And without further ado, Shauna, what deck are we talking about today, and who's the commander?
Well, we are talking about a deck that I am so excited for. This is the Quandrix deck, which is a blue and green, which is Simic commander deck. So I love Simic, as many of you who know me know that. So this deck, the commander is Adrix and Nev, twin casters. So we've got some merfolk, woohoo, wizards who are going to do some crazy shenanigans with lots of tokens and counters on those cards. Counters as in little +1/+1 counters. So we're hopefully going to amass a great big army and run people over is the plan. So Adrix and Nev, the twin casters, they are 2/2 for 2 and a green and a blue. And it has Ward 2, which is a new mechanic to this set, which means whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or an ability, an opponent controls, counter it unless that player pays 2. So it's got some little built-in counter magic action happening. And then it says if 1 or more tokens would be created under your control, twice that many tokens get created instead. I'm so excited.
Gotta love
I love tokens.
Tokens, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. And just to look a little bit further at this deck and what the guts of it do, if you take a look at our mana curve, we have quite a few 3 and 4 drop creatures, or I guess spells. It's a fairly basic mana curve. We do have a lot of quite a few high mana cost items as well, and there are 6 cards in this deck that have X in their mana cost. So their converted mana cost is actually usually around 2, but I didn't want to put them in there because that would give you a skewed sense of what they are, because ultimately you're probably going to pay them for a lot more than 2. So those are considered bigger spells as well. As far as the color breakdown in this deck, mostly green and multicolor. We do have 24 green, 13 blue, and 17 multicolor. There's a few colorless spells in there. Most of those are just mana ramp artifacts. And in this deck, we have actually 40 land. So a lot of land to help you with those spells that you need. Also some room to tweak if we want to tweak. And then the card types is pretty standard for most commander decks. Again, 40 land. We have 29 creatures, so this is a very creature-heavy deck. We have 21 instants and sorceries, 7 artifacts, 2 enchantments, and 1 lonely planeswalker. So really good to try and understand what the deck's guts are before you play it, because then you understand kind of how it's supposed to be played.
So when we do this breakdown, we use a commander formula, a deck building formula that is fairly popular across the interwebs, and it seems like Wizards seems to follow it as well. So this is, you have your commander, of course, and then you've got about 15 ramp cards, 15 removal, 13 card draw, and 12 or so high impact cards. Those are cards that are going to win you the game or drastically take over at least. And then we have about 10 other cards that are on the theme that support your main idea of your deck, and then about 34 lands. So we are evaluating each deck based on this formula to see how many of each of those sorts of cards we have in the deck. Some fit into multiple categories, but we put them into card category that you're probably going to use it for.
Yeah, definitely. Our first section
Yeah.
is ramp and mana generators. As Shauna just explained, our formula says that we should have probably around 15. Of course, that fluctuates up and down a couple. This deck has 10, so we're pretty light on mana ramp, but we do have 40 land, so it might be okay. And let's see what those things are to see how well they do for us. So first one that we're going to look at is Incubation Druid. It is a 2 mana cost elf druid. It's a 0/2. It taps for mana, so those are called mana dorks. If you ever hear someone say mana dork, it's basically a creature that taps for mana. And it's of any type that of land that that you control could produce. So as you start getting different colored lands, then you can tap this for either of those colors. Incubation Druid has a 1/1 counter on it. If it has a 1/1 counter on it, then you can add 3 mana of that type instead. So this is a nice thing to put a counter on, and it has Adapt, which allows you to put counters on it. So later on, you put it out for 2, you use it as a mana dork, and then you can transform it. Ultimately, 3 and 2 green, you can adapt 3, which means you're going to put 3 1/1 counters onto it, and then it will tap for more mana and be a 3/5. So just gets bigger later. It's great.
Then we have Coiling Oracle, which is a little multicolor card for a green and a blue, a little snake elf druid that's a 1/1. But when it enters the battlefield, you reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land, you get to put it on the battlefield. Otherwise, you get to put it in your hand. So it's definitely getting more cards in your hand or on the battlefield as soon as you play it. So it's kind of a 2-for-1. It's awesome.
And we have a new spell here, Quandrix Cultivator. I keep wanting to, for some reason, I just thought it was Quadrix, but it's not. It's Quandrix.
Quandrix.
Cultivator. For 1, a green, a hybrid, and a blue. So that's kind of a weird converted mana cost. But the hybrid mana means you can pay either green or blue. So there's some versatility there. It's a 3/4 turtle druid. And when it comes into the battlefield, you can search your library for a basic forest or island card and put it onto the battlefield and then shuffle your library. It doesn't come in tapped. It's just put it onto the battlefield. So you can play that and then have a land that you can use right away, which is great.
Yeah, so basically it becomes like a 3-cost 3/4, really, because it's replacing a land, which is awesome. Zyome Quandrix Prodigy. I love the art on this card. She's so cute. So for green and a blue, it's a legendary creature, human wizard. So this could be your commander if you wanted. You can pay 1 and tap this card. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. So you get to play an extra land, or you can pay 4 and draw a card. And if you control 8 or more lands, you draw 2 cards instead. So this is definitely extra card draw, extra ramp. It's going to work for you.
Definitely. Commander staple out there is Kodama's Reach. Search your library for 2 basic land cards, reveal those cards, put one of them onto the battlefield tapped and the other into your hand, then shuffle your library. Nothing wrong with searching for 2 for 3 mana. So nice early game if you have that.
And I'm so excited that these decks have Soul Ring in them too. It's a really hard to get card because it's such a good card. 1 mana artifact that you get 2 colorless mana for right away.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
And of course, another mana ramp card that's fairly well known is Rampant Growth. For 2 mana, it's a sorcery that you can search your library for a basic land and put that card onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle your library. One kind of note for those that are new to Commander or maybe getting back into it, or maybe just a seasoned player, it's always good to play these things kind of on your second main phase or at the end, right before your end step, so that you're searching while somebody else can move on with their turn, rather than make everybody watch you search for your deck. So tips from Shauna and Leslie.
Yes. Niece's Expedition for 4 and a green. This card it's a sorcery. It has Convoke on it, and so what that means is that you can tap creatures to pay for the mana that is required here, and that one is then you can go and search your library for up to 2 basic land cards and put them on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. So it's a really great same thing. Do that on your second main phase.
An Arcane Signet is in, I think, all of them, and has come out in pretty much every precon since this card was invented, and I love this card. Both of us do. For 2 mana, you get an artifact that taps for 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. So right up there with Soul Ring as one of those cards we really want.
Yeah. And it's cool too that they've been putting the signets into these decks as well. So this one is the Simic one, so that blue and green guild that you might hear people calling or talking about. It's a 2 mana cost artifact that you can pay 1 and tap it and add both green and blue, which is really nice.
Mm-hmm. And that's it for our mana ramp. Moving on to removal. So in our formula, 15 is what we think you should have for removal. This deck has 13, so we're right on par there. The first one that we're going to talk about is Plexing Test. It's one of our new ones for 3 and 2 blue. It's an instant, and you get to choose one of these. So you can either return all creature tokens to their owner's hand or return all non-token creatures to their owner's hand. So you have to choose whether it's tokens or non-tokens, but it does give you a choice there, and blue doing what blue does best ultimately, so it's great.
What happens when you return creature tokens to somebody's hand?
Good question. So creature tokens, because a token can't exist anywhere outside the battlefield, once it hits the graveyard or goes back into your hand, it just ceases to exist. So if you return someone's tokens, they just disappear and go away. So that's a really good choice if you can. But even if you choose their creatures, they have to recast them. So both good choices there.
Then we have Curse of the Swine, which is an old card that I used to not understand why would anyone do this, but for X and 2 blue, you get to exile X target creatures, and for each creature exiled this way, its controller creates a 2/2 green boar creature token. So this is very, very flexible. You can pick some of their creatures, different opponents, yourself if you need to get a creature out from underneath something. It's really, really versatile, and you use the X would be you'd pay whatever amount of mana that you want to do above the 2 blue, and then you get to create all those boars. Little piggies.
All right, and then we have Trigon Predator for 1 and a blue and a green. It is a 2/3 beast with flying, and when it deals combat damage to a player, you can destroy target artifact or enchantment player controls. So green is typically destroying artifacts and enchantments, which is great, and there's a lot of that in here, and it's nice to see that on a beast, and a flying one at that.
It's going to be fairly easy to get in. Cross and Grip for 2 and a green. It's an instant that has split second. So basically, that means that as soon as it's on the stack, as soon as you play it, people can't counter it, people can't do anything to it. So that's kind of nice. And then you destroy target artifact or enchantment. It's gone.
And it also allows them, I like this, rather than just saying that it can't be countered, I love that they can't play spells, because it makes it so they can't cast their, I'm going to give this thing hexproof spell, right?
Right. Yes, that's a good point to bring up. Thank you.
Yeah, and then Beast Within is 2 and a green. I love this card because I always say, I'm going to help you out by giving you a 3/3 green beast creature token. But you're destroying target permanent. Permanent, of course, is any target permanent that they have. It could be a land, it could be a enchantment, it could be an artifact, it could be a creature, which planeswalker, whatever. So, versatile.
Rapid hybridization is a similar sort of thing. It's just for 1 blue and instance to destroy a target creature, though, and it can't be regenerated, and that creature's controller creates a 3/3 froggy lizard token. So you turn their big beast into a frog.
Yeah. So now we get into one that probably could be in the high impact cards or in the removal. We put it in removal because it really is removal, but holy crap, it's very good removal. Terastodon for 6 and 2 green. It's an elephant, 9/9 elephant. When it enters the battlefield, you may destroy up to 3 target non-creature permanents. For each permanent put into a graveyard this way, its controller gets a 3/3 green elephant creature token. So you are giving them some beasts, but you're getting a 9/9 and maybe getting rid of some of those silly old planeswalkers, enchantments, or artifacts that they have.
Arashi the Sky Asunder for 3 and 2 green. It's a 5/5 huge spirit that doesn't fly. Anyway. And you can pay X and a green and tap this, and it deals X damage to target creature with flying. This is what I need. It has channel, which means you can pay X and 2 green and discard this card, and it deals X damage to each creature with flying. So you can use it as a kind of like an instant, or would it be an instant? Yeah, in this case, I think it would. To discard it and then deal X damage to those things as well. So a great removal tool or a nice creature to have out.
Awesome. And then this one and the next one are both cards that are actually hard to find when I've looked for them. But anyway, Hornet Nest for 2 and a green is a 0/2 defender. But whenever Hornet Nest is dealt damage, you can put that many 1/1 green insect creature tokens with flying and death touch onto the battlefield. So you're going to get some death touchers that people are not going to necessarily want to swing into. And because this deck is going to have a lot of counters added to its creatures, you're going to be able to turn the 0/2 into a larger thing. So you're going to be able to block with it more often. So it's gonna be great removal, though, adding all those death touchers for us.
Definitely, especially flying ones.
Yeah.
And then the queen herself, she's for 4 and 3 green, a 2/2 flying death toucher. And when she enters the battlefield, you create 4 little bugs to hang around with her to help you out. So those hornets are gonna get ya.
They're gonna get ya. Azuri Predation for 5 and 3 green is a sorcery. For each creature your opponents control, put a 4/4 green beast creature token onto the battlefield. Each of those beasts fights a different one of those creatures. So you're just going to create a nice little battle, and for every single creature on the battlefield, they're going to have a 4/4 beast creature fighting it. For some of those, it won't do anything because they're going to be too big and your beast is just going to die, but it will do 4 damage to it that may then allow you to do some additional damage, or somebody else do some additional damage to get rid of it. So you can be political with this card and say, hey, if I, do this, could you help me finish this person off or whatever too. So
yeah. So this sequence engine, I think, is a new card. It's an artifact, a green artifact for 2 and a green. You can tap it and pay X and exile a target creature card with mana value X. So mana value is also the same as converted mana cost. So the value of X from a graveyard. And then you get to create a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token with X +1 counters on it. And you can only do this as a sorcery, so on your main phase or your first main phase or your second main phase. So it's a great way to get some of that recursion that people are bringing stuff back from the graveyard. You're going to get rid of it so that they can't. And you get a bug.
And this one
fractal.
It's a tap ability. So can I do that when I first play it?
No, sorry. Yeah. Actually, you can with it's an artifact. Sorry.
Yeah. Not a
it's
creature,
an artifact,
so
yes, you can.
Yeah.
Really good question.
So Oversimplify is a 3 and a green and blue, so 5 converted mana cost or mana value, is a sorcery. You get to just exile all creatures. Each player creates a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token and puts a number of 1/1 counters on it equal to the total power of creatures they control that were exiled this way. So this could get out of control. This seems fun. I feel like if this happens on the board, everyone will go, okay, what do we got after this? So let's just break it all down, give everyone 1 creature, and if you had lots of power, then you're golden, and if not, then sorry about your luck. But I love it. I love it.
It's kind of crazy. All right, then we're into our card draw and tutors section. So the formula calls for about 13. The deck only has 9, but you saw that there are some other cards that could do card draw as well as removal or whatever. So We've got the Commander's Insight, which is another X cost card. So X and 3 blue, an instant. Target player draws X cards plus an additional card for each time you've cast a commander from the command zone this game. So that's just going to keep getting better and better.
Yeah. Hopefully you choose yourself. Curiosity Crafter for 3 and a blue. It's a flying 3/3 that allows you to have no maximum hand size, which is always good when you're drawing cards. And whenever a creature token you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. You need no maximum hand size with card draw like this. So it's maybe okay if you don't have as much card draw if you can get this one out on the battlefield. And it's an owl with a cat. So two of my favorite things.
Yes. And think about all these little bees. You have little hornets buzzing around. They're going to get in, and oh my gosh, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
Here's our little character again. A Recon Moment for 2 and a green and a blue. It's a little instant that says draw 2 cards. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. So that whole ramping and drawing thing that this little girl apparently is good at.
Yeah. And Idol of Oblivion, also another card that has 2 things. Anytime you can put cards in your deck that do 2 things, it's great. For 2 mana, you can have a artifact that you just tap to draw a card. Activate this ability only if you created a token this turn. Based on what we've seen so far, and we'll probably see a little bit later, you're going to be creating a lot of tokens. So you're okay here to probably draw a card whenever you want if you get this out. And when you don't need card draw anymore, you can pay 8, tap it, sacrifice it, and get a 10/10 colorless Eldrazi creature token. So that will help you towards the end of the game.
Mm-hmm. Then we have this beautiful art card. I absolutely love this card. It is Golden Ratio Sorcery for 1, a green and a blue. Lots of little animals flying around there. Draw a card for each different power among creatures you control. You're going to have all sorts of crazy different tokens and stuff. It's going to be so awesome.
Yeah, I love that the card draw is like drawing law.
Yeah.
Champion of Wits is a 2/1 for 3, and when it enters the battlefield, you get to draw cards equal to its power. So the first turn, 2. If you do, discard 2 cards. So you are going to kind of like try and decide what you want. So if you don't have any cards in hand, which hopefully you're not there, don't draw 2 and then have to discard them.
Yeah.
But it does have this cool ability called Eternalize, which came out with Hour of Devastation and Amonkhet.
Mm-hmm.
Exile this card from your graveyard to create a token that's a copy, except it's a 4/4, and it has the same abilities. So the second time, you're going to draw 4 and discard 4. So it's great.
It's one of my son's favorite cards.
Yeah.
Shamanic Revelation for 3 and 2 green. It's a little sorcery that says draw a card for each creature you control, and has Ferocious, which means you can gain 4 life for each creature you control with power 4 or greater. So it's a nice little life gain to keep you alive so you can do some more damage.
And Incubation Incognito. This card is a split card, which means you're going to choose which one you want to play. The first one is a sorcery that allows you to look at the top 5 cards of your library. You can reveal a creature card from among. I need to turn my head sideways. From among them, the rest in your library in random order at the bottom of your library. Or you can choose Incognito, costs a little bit more, but you're going to be using that as removal. So exile target creature. That creature controller creates a 3/3 green frog wizard creature token. We kind of feel that you'll probably be using this more as card draw than you will removal, but again, card that does 2 things.
It all depends. Then we have Return of the Wild Speaker, which is 4 and a green. Garuk here is going to let you choose one. It's an instant where you draw cards equal to the greatest power among non-human creatures you control. So that could potentially be a lot. Or you can swing in and with everybody getting +3, which is crazy. So now everything's big.
Now we're on to our favorite section to talk about, just because it's all the really cool cards. These are high impact cards. These are cards that are going to win you the game or just do lots of really cool stuff when you play them or by being on the battlefield. We recommend that you have about 12 of those in your deck. This deck has 11 that we felt fit this category, and the first one is Essex Fractal Bloom. It is a new one. It's a mythic for 4 and 2, or a green and a blue, so 6 mana. You get a 4/4 flyer. And the first time that you would create one or more tokens during each of your turns, you may instead choose a creature other than Essex Fractal Bloom and create that many tokens that are copies of that creature instead. So basically, you just get to choose what you want as a token instead of creating the token that it said if this is out on the battlefield. Crazy, crazy, especially with the next card that you could
Yes, I was going to
copy.
say. Especially if you copy Rampaging Baloths, which by itself is a crazy card for 4 and 2 green. It's a 6/6 trample with landfall. So whenever a land, all you do is play a land, enters the battlefield under your control, you get a 4/4 green beast. This card does crazy things. Plus, with your commander out, you're making 2 beasts just for playing a land.
And if you have Essex Fractal out, so going back to that, instead of them being 4/4 beasts, you can have them be Rampaging Baloths. So now you've just got another 2 Rampaging Baloths that are each going to trigger when you play a land. And you can see how crazy this deck is now excitingly going to be. All right, our next one is Mana Gorger. For 2 and a green, you get a Hydra. It's a little 1/1 Hydra with trample, but whenever a player casts a spell, any spell, put a 1/1 counter on Mana Gorger Hydra. So everyone's just going to keep playing the game. You're just going to be like, I'll just put this little 1/1 out. It's no problem. And then you're going to sit quietly and just keep putting counters on it.
And make copies of it and do some more. Why not?
I would recommend not being, too overly zealous when you get counters to say, and I'm putting a counter, and I'm putting a counter, because they will kill it right away. So just be quiet until it's like hard to kill.
So you can kill someone with the darn thing.
Yeah.
Replication technique for 4 and a blue. It's a little sorcery that has a new mechanic called Demonstrate. And what that means is when you cast this spell, you may copy it. If you do, you get to choose an opponent to also copy it. So it's a little bit of politics there. And you're going to help out your little friend across the table until you kill them later. Mm-hmm. And the spell is you create a token that's a copy of a target permanent you control. Yeah. Be choosy with who you give it to, but.
And if you have your commander out, it's 2. Spawning Kraken for 5 and a blue is a nice little Kraken creature. 6/6. Whenever a Kraken, Leviathan, Octopus, or Serpent you control deals damage to a player, create a 9/9 blue Kraken creature token. So he just creates big other Krakens, hopefully more than one, and just gets wide fast.
I can't even believe that card. It's just,
it's crazy.
Hydra Broodmaster for 4 and 2 green. It's a 7/7 Hydra that has pay 2 X's and 1 green to give it a monstrosity X, which means if this creature isn't monstrous, you get to put X 1/1 counters on it and it becomes monstrous. When it becomes monstrous, you get to put XX green Hydra creature tokens onto the battlefield. So that seems really confusing. But what that is if you decide that X is 2, so this would cost you 4 any color and 1 green, so 5 total. So X is 2. So then that makes it monstrous. So then you get to put out 2 2/2s for the little Hydras onto the battlefield. So whatever X is, you get to make that many and that size of Hydras. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, those are always the ones that when I teach new players that they have trouble.
It's very confusing. Yeah.
Theoretical Duplication for 2 and a blue is an instant. This is another new card. Look at him. He's like just this sage owl. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under an opponent's control this turn, create a token that's a copy of that creature. So they want to play creatures, that's fine. They can play creatures, but you're going to copy them.
Oh boy. Fractal Harness for X, a 2 and a green. This is a little artifact equipment. When it enters the battlefield, you create a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token, but you put X +1 counters on it and attach this harness to them. And so then whenever equipped creature attacks, you get to double the number of counters on it. What? That's
Crazy. I like that it's an equipment too, because it reminds me of Hydra's growth, but a lot of times you put it on something that you're not quite sure just so you can get it out. This way you can just kind of move it around. It's great.
Yeah.
Wait, do the counters stay on the equipment, or do they go on the
on the creature?
Creature. Okay, good.
Yep.
It was going to be way too powerful.
That's a good question. Yeah.
Biomathematician for 1 and a green and a blue. You get a 2/2 human wizard. When it enters the battlefield, you create a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token, and then you put a 1/1 counter on it. On each.
For each.
Yeah, for each. And then put a one counter on each fractal you control. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. Oh boy, we have a lot of fractals.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Then we have good old Garruk, Primal Hunter. He's our planeswalker in this deck. For 2 and 3 green, it's a 3 loyalty planeswalker that has +1. Create a 3/3 Beastie Boy. Or you can -3 and draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. That could be crazy. His -6 is create a 6/6 green worm creature token for each land you control. It's insane.
Mm-hmm.
It's at least 5 of them.
Or 10. Desolation Twins is our last high impact card. For 10, you get a 10/10 Eldrazi, and when you cast the spell, you get another 10/10 Eldrazi creature token. So really, you're paying 10 for 20 power, which is actually really good value, and a little bit crazy.
Yeah, I hate Eldrazi. They're too good.
Too good.
Then we're into our other cards on theme, cards that support our win conditions and stuff like that. So we've got the formula says about 10 of those. This deck has 16. So these cards could maybe go in other places too, but we just thought these are where you can maybe tweak a little bit. Dika, the Fractal Theorist, is a 4 and blue 3/3 human wizard that has Magecraft, another new, I think it's new.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Yeah, I think
anyway,
so.
It might be a new
Magecraft
mechanic. But anyways,
mechanic, so.
Magecraft, it's Metalcraft I'm thinking of. So this is Magecraft, where whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, you get to create those little fractals with X 1/1 counters on it, where X is that spell's mana value. So that's the mana cost. And then you can pay 3 and a blue, and target creature token can't be blocked. That could be bad.
So, your 10/10 Eldrazi can't be blocked now. Spitting Image for 4 and hybrid mana. Hybrid mana, create a token that's a copy of target creature. This card also has Retrace, so you may cast this card from your graveyard but discarding a land card in addition to paying its other costs. You do have 40 land in this deck. You're going to be drawing lots of cards, which usually puts that land in your hand. So don't feel you have to play land. If you have enough, keep them in your hand for things like this, like discarding cards.
This little frog thing is going to come, Frogling, is going to come in handy. Plaxcaster Frogling for 1 and a green and a blue. It's a little 0/0 that has Graft 3, which means it enters the battlefield with 3 +1 counters on it. And you can pay, with those 3 +1 counters. So when another creature comes in, you can move one of those counters onto it, the new creature that comes in. And then you can pay 2, and a target creature with +1/+1 counter on it has Shroud, which means it can't be the target of any spells or abilities. So it can be a little sneaky kind of guy. So you can use that at instant speed. You're going to have lots of creatures with +1 counters on them. So it could be really, really helpful for you to get some damage in and protect your guys. Yeah.
Primal Empathy for 1 and a green and a blue is an enchantment that reminds me a lot of Never Ending Story. Look at that art. At the beginning of your upkeep, draw a card if you control a creature with the greatest power among creatures on the battlefield. Otherwise, put a 1/1 counter on a creature that you control. So it's good either way, whether you have the biggest creature or not. It's going to get you some good stuff.
I love that card. Biomass Mutation for X and 2 hybrid green-blue mana. It's an instant, and creatures you control have base power and toughness XX until end of turn. So all that stuff that you've got little counters on, your little bugs, your little wasps, all that stuff can be much, much bigger with this mutation. Suddenly you've won
Basically
the game.
a crater hoof behemoth, right? Win the game, swing in with everything.
Yeah.
Master Biomancer for 2 and a green and a blue. Each other creature you control enters the battlefield with a number of additional 1/1 counters on it to Master Biomancer's power and as a mutation or mutant in addition to its other types. So it's a 2/4, and it's so basically each other creature is going to enter the battlefield with 2 1/1 counters on it to start with, but if you put counters on this guy, then his power is higher, and so he's just going to keep making your stuff enter with even more counters.
Yeah. I'm so excited for this deck. It's going to be so fun. Rite of Replication for 2 and 2 blue. It's a sorcery that has kicker 5. So what kicker is that you can pay extra mana. So if you pay the 4 for its regular mana cost and then another 5 for its kicker cost, you get to do the kicker piece. So basically, you put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of a target creature. If you kick it, though, you get to put 5 of those tokens on the battlefield instead. So you could have some really big stuff happening there if you have enough mana to do it.
10 if you have your commander. Cassetto Orochi Archmage for 1 and a green and a blue. He's a little 2/2 snake wizard that has an ability that you can pay 2 and target creature can't block this turn. So that thing that they have on the battlefield can't be blocked. Yeah, that thing that they have on the battlefield that you just can't get around. Well, now you can. If that creature is a snake, it gets +2/+2 until the end of turn. So, yeah.
Crazy. I don't think there's very many snakes in here, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
Who cares? We can get in. Kazandu Tusk Collar. It's, what are these called? Leveling up cards? Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
Level up. For 1 and a green, it is a little level up for, you get to go up a level every time you pay an extra 1 and a green. So its first level 2 to 5 is you can tap it and create a 3/3 green elephant. Or you can get up to, when you get up to 6, you get to create 2 3/3 green elephants. So it's a nice little way of getting lots of little tokens.
Yeah. Forgotten Ancient for 3 and a green. Whenever a player casts a spell, you may put a 1/1 counter on Forgotten Ancient. So as they're playing the game, whatever they're casting, you're just going to put 1/1 counters. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, you may move any of those 1/1 counters from Forgotten Ancient to another creature. So nice little counter generator that you can just not attack with and just keep getting counters and move them onto the other creatures. So nice. I like it.
I've seen this do crazy things.
Yeah.
Guardian Augmenter for 2 and a green. It's a little troll wizard that has flash, so that means you can play it on the other person's turn. And commander creatures you control get +2/+2, and commanders you control have hexproof, so you can use this as protection for your commander, for sure. If someone's being mean to him.
And I mean, that one is okay, but there's so few situations that it's going to be relevant for that it might be one that you tweak out of this deck.
Yeah.
Paradox Zone for and a green. It's an enchantment when it enters the battlefield with a growth counter on it. At the beginning of your end step, you double the number of growth counters on Paradox Zone. And then you create a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token, put X11 counters on it, where X is the number of growth counters on Paradox Zone. So Paradox Zone is going to keep getting bigger, and it's just going to keep spitting out fractals that are bigger and bigger and bigger each turn. They're going to want to get rid of this enchantment. And the nice thing about this is if someone does do a board wipe, you have this on the battlefield, you're just going to keep getting big things as you go. Because, yeah.
I'm excited about it.
And
I want it today.
I'm just going to go back here because whenever you, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may move any number of X1 winners from onto other creatures. Oh, I was wondering if I could move my counters onto this one to add counters to it, but you can't. So,
nice round creatures.
Forget I said
it. Too bad. All right, Reef Worm for 3 and a blue. It's a little 0/1 worm. What's the big deal? But when it dies, you get to create a 3/3 blue fish. That when it dies, it becomes a 6/6 blue whale. That when it dies, it becomes a 9/9 kraken.
I love it.
It just escalates.
Just escalates. Someone plays Reef Worm, you're like, oh man. Crafty Cut Purse, 3 and a blue for a 2/2 flash creature. When it enters the battlefield, each token that would be created under an opponent's control this turn is created under your control instead. So you're playing against that person that's also playing tokens. They play their card, and in response, you're going to say, actually, I like those tokens. I'm going to have them instead. Rude.
Yeah, that's right. Steal them. Then we have Ruxa, Patient Professor. I have not been patient today, but anyway. For 2 and 2 green, it's a 4/4 legendary bear druid. Whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, you get to return a target creature card with no abilities from your graveyard to your hand. So there's not a lot of those in this deck. I think pretty much everything has abilities, but anyway. And creatures you control with no abilities get +1/+1. So all those tokens do get +1/+1. So that's kind of nice. You may have creatures you control with no abilities assign their combat damage as though they weren't blocked. So suddenly all of your tokens are blocked.
Yeah, that's the key there. With those last 2 abilities are really what it's for.
It's really what it's for. Yeah.
Geometric Nexus, I love I want to go to that place, is a 2 mana cost artifact, and whenever a player casts an instance or sorcery spell, put a number of charge counters on Geometric Nexus equal to the spell's mana value or converted mana cost. So 6 and tap it, you can remove all those charge counters from it and create a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token, put X11 counters on it, where X is the number of charge counters removed this way. So you're just going to make it bigger, and then when you feel like it, you're going to create a fractal again, you can just keep it there after someone does a board wipe. Now you create a big beastie.
I really wish I had these cards for our challenge tonight.
I know, right?
I would have a lot of stuff. Let's just say. Then we're into our land. So the formula calls for 34. This deck has 40. You do need quite a bit of land, but maybe not that much, especially with all the card draw we got going on. But
yeah, it's a lot.
That's something you can play around with and tweak. So we've got our gold colored lands that are pretty typical. There's a new one that's been added in this set that's called Study Hall. All of these decks have it. It taps for colorless mana, but you can pay 1 and add 1 mana of any color. When you spend this mana to cast your commander, you get to scry X, where X is the number of times your commander has been cast. Plus Exotic Orchard, which is the one that taps for mana that your opponents have. Command Tower is for mana that's in your commander's color identity. And Opal Palace is if you use it for a color that for a creature that shares your commander's color identity, it gets to have another +1 counter on it, which is really nice. So those are kind of the typical gold colored lands.
And then we have a couple land that just cast for or they tap for green, but they have other abilities that you might
Mhm.
find useful. So Mosswort Bridge and Oran Reef, the Vastwood. Mosswort has Hideaway, which means that when it enters the battlefield, you're going to look at the top 4 cards of your library and exile one of them under it. And basically, you can use that later because it has the ability you can pay 1 and tap and play the exiled card without paying its mana cost. If
Mhm.
creatures you control have a power 10 or greater. So you're just going to tuck something away until your creatures are big enough, and then you're going to cast it for free, which is great. And Oran Reef has the ability to put a 1/1 counter on each green creature that entered the battlefield this turn. So don't forget your land is there and that you can use that with for abilities.
Definitely good ones. Then we have our 5 lands that have blue and green mana options with them. So we've got Lumbering Falls, Quandrix Campus, Temple of Mystery, Simic Growth Chamber, and Yagamaya Coast. A couple of them, the Lumbering Falls can become a elemental with hexproof, which is really nice. So you can use that later on in the game. The Quandrix Campus is new to this set. They're really nice that they've done these ones. And they come in tap, but they can be green or blue, and then you can use it to scry later on. Temple of Mystery, the typical scry lands that are out there. Simic Growth Chamber, that one taps for both of the colors. And Yavimaya Coast is another one that can be colorless, or you can pay life to get one of those 2 colors that you need.
Yep. And then we have a few little cycle lands, Lonely Sandbar, Llanowar Reborn, and Tranquil Thicket. So 2 of them have cycle and 1 of them has graft on it. They just tap for whichever color they are. Graft allows you to, when this land enters the battlefield with a 1/1 counter on it, this land enters with a 1/1 counter on it. And when a creature enters the battlefield, you may move a 1/1 counter from this land onto it. So it just kind of creates a little counter that you could use. You go back to your incubation druid that didn't have any counters. If you used this land, you could graft with it. So get a counter right away and mana ramp faster.
Nice. Then we've got a couple mana fixing type lands. So Myriad Landscape, it's colorless, or you can sacrifice it and go get 2 basic lands. Blighted Woodland, that's another one that you can sacrifice it and go get the land that you need to. And then there's Rogue's Passage, which is one of Leslie's favorites. You can use it to make your creature unblockable and end the game. Then there is Nova Gen Heart of Progress, which really works well in this deck because you can use it to pay a green and a blue and put counters on each creature that enters the battlefield. And then Temple of False God, it's another good one, a commander staple that lets you have 2 colorless mana, which is really nice. Mm-hmm. Then we've got 11 Forest and 10 Island. So lots of regular lands too.
Yeah. Lots of options, lots of room to tweak there as well, which brings us to our next section, which is our second favorite section after all those cool high impact cards. We're going to look at some cards that you may want to add to this deck that could either take it to another level or just add you some of those things that maybe we didn't have. For example, we talked a little bit about card draw and how the card draw that's in it is fairly good, but maybe we need a little bit more like one-off card draws. The first tweak that we have for you is Coma Cosmos Serpent for 3 and 2 green and 2 blue. I am sure that when they created this serpent or brought this serpent out in Kaldheim, they were thinking of this commander. This spell can't be countered. At the beginning of each upkeep, create a 3/3 blue serpent creature token named Coma's Coil, and then you can sacrifice another serpent to either tap target permanent. Its activated abilities can't be activated, or to give Coma indestructible because everyone's going to be trying to kill it after it's on the battlefield. So 6/6, crazy card. You could, it's not a cheap card, but if you have it, you could definitely add it. It would add some spice to this deck.
Definitely. The Nader Kraken, again, this is one of my son's favorite cards, and it's understandable why, because it can make some crazy things happen. It's a 2/3 for 1 and 2 blue. And whenever you draw a card, you may pay 1. And if you do, you get to put a +1 counter on this Kraken and create a little tentacle. So yeah, these 2 cards, think about it with that other card that when serpents and Krakens do damage, you get to make more Kraken, like 9/9 Krakens. Yeah. So yeah, this is going to get out of hand with these 2 cards, especially.
Oh, and apparently we were being really degenerate when we were coming up with cards to put into this deck, but Scoop Swarm is another one that would probably be very good in this deck for 2 and a green. It has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you get a little green insect creature token. But if you have 6 or more land on the battlefield already, then you get to create another Scoot Swarm that's then going to create more Scoot Swarms. And if you have your commander on the battlefield, it's going to do 2 instead of 1, and it's going to get out of hand fairly quickly. So yeah, sorry about anybody playing against that.
Yes.
Hopefully my opponents.
Yeah. And then this card, Tendershoot Dryad, this used to drive me crazy. This card is so good in so many green decks because especially Commander, it's so easy to have City's Blessing, and suddenly you've got like so many little sapperlings that aren't little anymore, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing and just making a huge board state. They have to deal with this thing or they're dead.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And then we have Tatiova, Benthic Druid, a little merfolk 3/3 Druid for 5. And whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life and you draw a card. So it's going to help you with your card draw issues if you have any. And it's a nice little card that stays on the battlefield and gets you continual card draw. So that's great.
And we wouldn't be talking about a green counters deck without including this beast, Vorinclex, Monstrous Raider. Surprise, he's here for 6/6 for 6, 4 and 2 green. It has trample and haste. And if you would put 1 or more counters on a permanent or player, put twice that many of those counters instead. It's crazy. And then you shut down the number of counters that they get on the other sides of the table there. So yeah, it's again going to really be hard for people to deal with. They have to remove it for sure.
Of course, we would be remiss when talking about token synergy if we didn't include Second Harvest and Doubly Season as possibilities. Second Harvest is for each token you control, create a token that's a copy of that permanent. So that's a one-time use instant. Whereas Doubling Season is an enchantment that stays on the battlefield, costs you 5, and if an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many tokens instead. So not only are you copying something, creating an additional token, then your commander would create another additional token, and then this would happen to create twice that many tokens. So Doubling Season is probably the better card, but it also is the more expensive card of the 2. So it just depends on, again, how much you want to level up your deck, how much you want to kind of keep it as budget or casual. That's up to you, not us.
Doubling Season does counters as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's a really good card for this deck, but it is going to be an expensive card for you to buy.
Yeah. Then we have Guardian Project, again, for that whole card draw thing. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it doesn't have the same name as another creature you control, which in Commander doesn't, then you get to draw a card. So there's quite a few creatures in this deck, so you're going to be able to draw lots of cards with that.
Mm-hmm. And Simic Ascendancy we thought might go well in this deck as well. For 2 mana, a green and a blue, you get an enchantment that allows you to pay 3 and put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. Whenever 1 or more 1/1 counters are put onto a creature you control, put that many growth counters on Simic Ascendancy. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, if Simic Ascendancy has 20 or more growth counters on it, you win the game. So let's speed up your win a little.
Yep. That helps with the board wipes and stuff. They have to get rid of this thing.
Yeah.
You can still win. Helm of the Host for 4. It is one of my favorite equipments. When at the beginning of combat on your turn, you can create a token that's a copy of the equipped creature that you've got this on, except it's not legendary and it has haste. Mm-hmm. So yeah, equip is 5 on it. So it's pretty expensive to make happen, but once you get that going, it's happening.
Yeah,
for sure.
Create copies of your commander that aren't legendary. Herald of Secret Streams for 3 and a blue. We thought would really go well with your 1/1 counter synergy. This is in almost all of our 1/1 counter decks. So creatures with a 1/1 counter on them can't be blocked. Nothing like a good unblockable big beefy dude.
Or several.
Because
you're going to have blocks. Oh,
everything.
Then we have a couple of cards that can make copies. So again, this whole copying idea is here. So we've got the Spark Double, which is for 3 and a blue. It's a creature, an illusion, and you may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of a target creature or planeswalker you control, except it enters with an additional counter on it. If it's a creature, it enters with an additional loyalty counter if it's a planeswalker, and it's not legendary. So that's really, really nice that you can do this copying and copy your commander, for example. Mm-hmm. Whereas Quasi-Duplicate is a sorcery. You can do this one twice because it does have Jumpstart, but you can create a token that's a copy of a target creature you control, but that whole legendary thing will apply in this one. And then you can do that again from the graveyard with the Jumpstart ability that's there. So.
And our last suggestion is Karuga. You're going to have some big beefy things. We don't really think you should use him as your commander, but 5/4 or 5 mana for a 5/4, and when he enters the battlefield, you get to draw a card for each other permanent you control with converted mana cost of 3 or greater. And as we were talking about earlier, our mana cost on this, there are quite a few larger mana cost creatures, Leviathans, all of those things. So if we're adding some card draw, this might be a good option for you because he's also big and beefy and gets you other things in return. So good old hippo dude.
He's a good boy. He's a good boy. All right. So that's it for this time. Thank you so much for watching and listening and hanging out with us till the end. We are available on YouTube and your podcasts, wherever you get those from. You can hang out with us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. We're also on streaming regularly on Twitch, so come and hang out with us there. We have lots of fun in our Commander stream, so just come on by and see that. And we would love to hear what you think about this deck and our tweak ideas and what you would do. Make sure you contact us and let's have a chat. And that's it for this time. We'll see you next time. And in the meantime, tap those magic cards.
And have fun doing it. Bye, guys.
Thank you.